The war zone stretched across the blackened void like a wound in the stars. Planets once full of life now lay shattered, their skies torn apart by fire and energy weapons. Alien fleets, the Zolarians and Korathi, clashed endlessly, their ships moving like predators in a deadly dance. Explosions lit the darkness and debris floated silently, a graveyard of machines and lost civilizations. The galaxy had forgotten peace. It only remembered fear and destruction. Yet amid all this chaos, a lone ship appeared on the edge of the conflict. Its hull gleamed silver, reflecting the distant suns like a shard of hope in the darkness. The USS Aegis, small but unyielding, moved forward without hesitation. Its engines whispered softly in the vacuum, a calm voice in the storm. The alien fleets noticed immediately. Thousands of sensors turned toward it, analyzing, warning, and preparing to destroy. But the human ship did not retreat. It did not hide. It moved forward steadily, as if it belonged to a different kind of space, one of courage and conviction rather than fear. Inside the Aegis, Captain Mara Hayes stood at the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic map before her. Her face was calm, but her heart carried the weight of responsibility. The galaxy depended on this small crew, on this single mission. If they failed, countless lives would be lost and the war would continue for decades. She breathed slowly, steadying herself. "We are the last chance," she whispered. "We must be strong." Lieutenant Aaron, her second in command, glanced at her nervously. "Captain, they're noticing us. All enemy fleets are locking on. Weapons are armed. They'll fire the moment we move." Mara's lips curved into a small, confident smile. "Let them look," she said softly, almost to herself. "They've never faced humans before." The words carried more power than any weapon. Humans had a history of facing impossible odds and surviving. They had fought through natural disasters, extinction-level threats, and countless wars. Their strength was not just in their machines, but in their hearts. The alien fleets had never encountered a species with that kind of resilience. And now, in the middle of this endless war, that resilience would make them tremble. Outside, the Zolarian commander Zarn growled in frustration. A single human ship? What foolishness. His voice echoed across his fleet. "Destroy it immediately. Do not let it reach the center of the war zone." On the Korathi side, a similar order rang out. "Focus all firepower on the human vessel. It cannot be allowed to survive." The fleet surged forward, a tide of metal and energy converging on the Aegis. But something strange happened. Their weapons, despite being powerful and deadly, hesitated. Targeting systems glitched. Missiles faltered mid-flight. Cannons overheated instantly. Alien pilots yelled at their consoles, but no one could explain why their weapons refused to obey. Fear spread like wildfire. Inside the Aegis, Mara walked among her crew. Her presence radiated calm, a steadying force against the storm outside. "Stay focused," she said. "Remember, we are not just fighting machines. We are carrying hope. The hope that one small act can change everything." Aaron shook his head in disbelief. "Captain..." "It's working. Their weapons aren't firing." "They can't." Mara put a hand on his shoulder. "It's not just their weapons, Aaron, it's their minds. They've never faced someone who doesn't fear them. They've never faced humans." A soft hum filled the bridge as the ship's systems synchronized. Lights danced across the consoles, reflecting in the crew's eyes. They were tired, yes, but determined. Every person on board felt the weight of the moment. This was no longer just a mission. It was a message, a statement that humanity could stand alone, and yet still carry the universe on its shoulders. Beyond the shields of the Aegis, alien ships approached closer. Zarn's voice roared again. "Fire! Show them the price of defiance." But the weapons failed again. Panic erupted. Pilots slammed buttons, shouted orders, and yet the human ship moved forward, unharmed, unafraid, unstoppable in its calm resolve. Mara returned to the captain's chair and looked out at the chaos. Her mind was clear, her heart steady. The war zone, filled with hatred and destruction, now had a single point of light: the Aegis. One human ship, small, fragile, yet unyielding. And for the first time in years, the aliens hesitated, sensing that something they could not understand had entered their midst. Mara's voice broke the silence on the bridge. "Whatever happens next," she said softly, "remember this. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to move forward, even when all seems lost." The ship drifted forward into the heart of the war zone alone, but carrying a weight far heavier than any fleet could bear. The galaxy had never seen anything like this. And in the quiet before the storm, a single truth became clear. One human ship, moving with purpose and courage, could change the course of history. The USS Aegis glided steadily deeper into the war zone. Stars burned bright through the shattered remains of planets, painting a surreal landscape of light and darkness. Every alien sensor in the sector was trained on the human ship. The Zalarians and Karathi could not believe what they were seeing. A lone vessel, no fleet, no reinforcements, moving calmly toward the heart of the battlefield. Inside the Aegis, the bridge hummed with quiet efficiency. Crew members adjusted consoles, checked readings, and prepared for any attack. But no panic filled the room. Captain Mara Hayes stood at the center, her posture firm, her eyes focused on the holographic display showing the enemy fleets closing in. She could feel their anticipation, their fear, even across the void. Lieutenant Aaron leaned over her shoulder, whispering, "Captain, they're preparing everything. Weapons, missiles, energy arrays. If they fire, we'll be torn apart instantly." Mara nodded, her calmness spreading to the crew. "Let them prepare," she said softly. "Fear is a weapon we carry too." Outside, the alien fleets tightened their formation. Hundreds of ships surged forward, bristling with deadly energy. Commander Zarn's growls echoed through the Zalarian fleet. "They are defiant. How dare they approach us alone? Fire everything!" But when the weapons activated, nothing happened. Cannons glowed, missiles arced, energy beams flared. But every shot misfired or fizzled into the void. Panic rippled across the fleets. Pilots screamed, buttons were slammed, alarms blared, and still the human ship moved forward. "What is happening?" Zarn shouted, voice shaking with disbelief. "Why won't our weapons fire?" From the Karathi fleet, Commander Rith joined in, equally baffled. "This is impossible." A single human vessel. How can it exist in the center of our war without fear or weakness? Inside the Aegis, Mara watched the alien fleets hesitate. She didn't see fear as weakness. She saw understanding beginning to take root in their minds. They had never met a species like humans before. A species that refused to panic, refused to surrender, and moved forward even when facing impossible odds. Aaron's voice trembled slightly as he stared at the screens. "Captain..." "They're frozen. They're stopping." Mara placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's not just that, Aaron, they don't understand us yet. They've never faced courage like ours. They're seeing something new, something they cannot calculate. And right now it's terrifying them." For a brief moment, the war zone fell eerily quiet. Ships floated in tense stasis, weapons unresponsive. The alien pilots looked at each other with wide eyes. Their instincts screamed to attack, but something deeper whispered caution. Their pride, their hatred, their desire for victory, all of it faltered in the face of something beyond their understanding. Unwavering human resolve. Mara's voice carried across the bridge, steady and strong. "We do not fight for conquest," she said, almost to herself. "We fight because we must survive. We fight for hope, and hope is contagious." Outside, the fleets could feel it. The humans did not radiate fear, anger, or hate. They radiated calm, focus, and determination. A strange energy seemed to ripple from the Aegis. Subtle but undeniable. Every alien ship felt it. A presence that unsettled the mind and challenged centuries of experience. Commander Zarn's tentacles clenched in frustration. "Unbelievable," he hissed. "All our power, and we are stopped by one tiny vessel." On the human ship, Mara's eyes softened as she watched the alien fleets falter. "They've never known someone like us," she said quietly. "They don't understand courage yet. But they will, Arn swallowed hard. It's terrifying, Captain. How can one ship do this? How can one crew make hundreds of ships hesitate? Mara smiled faintly. It's not about the ship, Aaron. It's about who we are. Humanity is never predictable, never weak, and never broken. And sometimes that is more powerful than any weapon. The alien fleet slowly backed away, unsure. They couldn't fire. They couldn't advance. They didn't know whether to attack or flee. In that moment, the entire war zone held its breath. The impossible had happened. One human ship, moving alone into the heart of chaos, had stopped the galaxy's greatest fleets in their tracks. Mara turned to her crew. "Prepare for communication," she said. "We are about to speak to a war that has forgotten how to listen. And maybe, just maybe, they will hear something more than fear." As the USS Aegis glided forward, steady and unafraid, a new reality spread across the battlefield. The humans were not just a species to fight, they were a force to reckon with. Not with weapons, not with numbers, but with courage, heart, and an unshakable will. For the first time in centuries, the war zone trembled. Not from blasts or explosions, but from the quiet, unstoppable presence of one human ship. The war zone, once a chaotic storm of fire and fury, had grown eerily quiet. Ships from both the Zalarian and Karathi fleets drifted in place, their weapons frozen, their engines humming with uncertainty. No one moved. No one dared. The USS Aegis glided forward, calm and unyielding, its silver hull reflecting the scattered starlight like a shard of hope piercing through darkness. Captain Mara Hayes stood at the bridge, her eyes steady and resolute. She knew what came next could change everything. This was no longer just about survival. It was about reaching into the minds of those who had forgotten what it meant to listen, to understand and to fear what courage could inspire. Lieutenant Aaron leaned close, voice trembling slightly. "Captain, they're frozen. Completely. It's like they can't process." Mara nodded. "Good," she said softly. "They must see that we are not just another ship. We are humans. And humans do not give up." She activated the communication array. A clear, strong signal pulsed outward, reaching across light years to every ship in the war zone. The Aegis spoke, not with the harsh crackle of weapons, not with the cold logic of a machine, but with the voice of humanity, calm, firm, and unshakable. "Solarians, Karathi, enough!" Mara's voice carried through the void, steady and authoritative, yet gentle in a way no alien language had ever heard before. "You have fought for centuries. Countless lives have been lost. You have spilled oceans of blood across planets. And yet, what have you gained? Only hatred. Only suffering. Stop this now, or the consequences will be unimaginable." Across the war zone, alien commanders froze in shock. Their tentacles, claws, and mechanical limbs trembled. Every sensor, every instrument recorded something they could not comprehend. The words were simple, but the meaning, the authority, the courage behind them was overwhelming. Commander Zarn of the Zalarians bellowed, "Impossible! No one dare speak to me like that. Fire on them!" The weapons did not respond. They could not. Something about the humans, about the way they faced impossible odds without fear, disrupted every calculation, every command protocol. Commander Rith of the Karathi gasped, It speaks with power. Power we cannot fight." Mara's voice continued unwavering. "You have been at war so long. You have forgotten what it means to choose. But I remind you, life is not for conquering, life is for living. You can end this now. Lay down your weapons. Leave your anger behind, and perhaps for the first time your species can survive." The message rippled across every ship, every bridge, every alien mind. Fear mixed with curiosity, anger with awe. They had never heard a voice that did not tremble, a voice that did not bend under pressure. This was not a threat alone. It was a declaration of something far more terrifying: the refusal to be intimidated, the refusal to surrender to chaos. Inside the Aegis, the crew held their breath, hearts pounding. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines and the faint beep of the communication array. Mara looked at each of them, her gaze steady and kind. "It's working," she whispered. "They're listening. They can feel it." In the Zilarian fleet, Zarn's mind raced. He had been the commander of hundreds of ships, the master of 1,000 battles. Yet never had he encountered this. One small vessel, no weapons, no fleet, speaking across the void and freezing entire armies with the weight of its courage. "How can one human hold such presence?" he hissed. The Karathi were no different. Rith's claws tightened around his console as he realized that his fleet was paralyzed not by force, but by the unyielding resolve of a single species. "This is not fear," he admitted quietly to himself. "This is something we do not understand." And then Mara spoke again, softer this time, almost like a whisper across the stars. "You can end this. Not with death, not with weapons, not with fear. End this with understanding. Lay down your arms. Choose life. Choose hope. Choose to stop a war that has cost too much." A silence deeper than space itself fell over the war zone. Even the stars seemed to pause, as if listening. The alien fleets drifted in stillness, no one daring to move, no one daring to speak. And in that quiet a seed was planted, the seed of possibility, of mercy, of a future untouched by endless war. Lieutenant Aaron finally spoke, voice barely audible. "Captain, it's happening. They're hesitating." Mara nodded, feeling a surge of hope. She knew that fear had lost and courage had won. Not through weapons, not through numbers, but through the sheer unyielding heart of humanity. In that moment, the Aegis was more than a ship. It was a symbol, a message written across the stars that one human voice, calm, steady, fearless, could stop a galaxy at war. And somewhere deep in the hearts of every alien watching, a new truth began to take hold. Humanity was not just another species to fight. Humanity was a force that could not be ignored, and for the first time in centuries the war zone held its breath, listening to a human voice that promised life where only death had existed before. The war zone remained frozen in an uneasy silence. Ships drifted like massive, lifeless shadows across the void, their weapons idle, their engines humming softly in confusion. The USS Aegis moved steadily among them, a lone silver beacon cutting through the darkness. Its crew, though tense, radiated calm and purpose, a calm no alien weapon could shatter. Captain Mara Hayes walked across the bridge, observing each crew member. Every eye was wide, every breath careful. They were tired, yet their spirits burned brighter than ever. This mission was more than a job. It was a statement, a message carried across light years. Humanity would not yield. And even in the smallest of numbers, humans could inspire change. Lieutenant Aaron broke the silence, voice shaky but excited. "Captain, they're still frozen. Entire fleets, completely stopped. It's incredible." Mara's gaze softened, a proud smile touching her lips. "Yes, Aaron. They see something they've never understood before. They see courage, hope, and a species that does not give up, no matter the odds." She paused, turning her attention to the view screen. Alien ships floated silently, their crews unsure how to act. Mara thought about the countless worlds torn apart by this war, about the millions of lives lost on both sides, and her heart ached. But she also felt a spark of possibility. This moment could end centuries of conflict in a way no weapon ever could. "Prepare for contact," she said, her voice firm yet gentle. "We are about to show them what it means to be human." Aaron nodded, swallowing hard. "Communication arrays online, Captain. Ready to broadcast." Mara took a deep breath and spoke again, her words steady and full of conviction. "Zilarians, Karathi, listen carefully. We do not seek to destroy. We do not seek to conquer. We are humans, and we are here to offer a choice. Continue this endless war or take the first step toward peace." Across the void, alien minds trembled. Some could not comprehend the audacity of a single ship addressing entire fleets without fear. Others felt a strange pull, an emotion they had never experienced. Respect. Commander Zarn gritted his teeth, struggling to maintain control. Impossible. One human, one vessel, dares to lecture entire armies? Rith of the Karathi fleet shared Zarn's disbelief. Yet deep within him he felt the truth of Mara's words. Could it be they really are different? Could one human actually hold this power? Mara's words continued, soft but unyielding. War has taken too much from you. Lives, planets, honor, and still you fight. But fighting without reason only leaves emptiness behind. Lay down your weapons. Speak to each other. Not across cannons, not through missiles. Speak with honesty, with courage. Stop the killing before it consumes everything. Inside the Aegis, the crew held their collective breath. Every pulse, every glance, every unspoken word carried the weight of humanity. They were not just representing themselves. They carried the legacy of every human who had ever faced impossible odds and refused to fall. Slowly, tiny movements began in the alien fleets. A ship rotated slightly. A pilot lowered a weapon. A communication channel flickered to life. Commander Zarn barked orders but hesitated before speaking again. Something about the humans disrupted his instinct for aggression. He realized that no battle strategy could overcome a species that fought not for dominance, but for survival, hope, and honor. Mara watched this carefully. "They are beginning to understand," she whispered. "Not everyone, not yet, but some are starting to see the truth." Aaron's eyes were wide. "They're hesitating, Captain. Whole squadrons. They're not firing, they're not moving." Mara nodded. "That's right. They've never experienced a species like us. A species that faces fear and moves forward anyway. They're learning in their own way that courage matters more than numbers, that hope can spread faster than fear." Across the war zone, alien commanders looked at each other with a mixture of awe and confusion. They had never seen such discipline without threat, such bravery without weapons, such unity without control. For the first time, they felt uncertainty creep into their minds. Could it be that the humans had found a way to change everything without a single shot fired? Mara's voice carried again, calm and steady, reaching every corner of the battlefield. "You do not have to continue this war. You can choose another path. You can end the suffering today. One choice can save millions. One choice can restore honor. You only have to be brave enough to take it." And for the first time across the black expanse of space, something miraculous happened. Hesitation turned to understanding. Confusion turned to contemplation. And in the hearts of alien commanders, a seed was planted, a seed of change, a seed of hope, and the realization that humanity's strength was not in weapons or numbers, but in the courage to face the impossible and remain unbroken. Mara turned to her crew, her voice soft, almost proud. "This is what it means to be human. Not perfect, not invincible, but brave enough to speak truth in the darkest hour. Brave enough to offer peace when no one expects it. That is our way." The USS Aegis continued its journey into the center of the war zone, unarmed but unstoppable. And somewhere deep in every alien mind, the realization grew stronger. Humans were not just another enemy. Humans were something entirely different. Humans were a force the galaxy had never known and a force it could not ignore. The war zone had never been quieter. Ships from both the Zalarian and Karathi fleets hung in the void, suspended as if time itself had paused. Missiles and energy beams remained dormant in their launch tubes, and the hum of engines filled the empty space with a tense, uneasy rhythm. All eyes, both alien and human, watched as the USS Aegis moved steadily forward, unwavering, calm, and almost impossibly alone. Inside the Aegis, Captain Mara Hayes stood at the bridge, her hands resting lightly on the console. The crew's eyes were wide, hearts pounding. Each of them felt the magnitude of the moment. This was more than a mission. It was history unfolding in real time. Every second, every breath carried the weight of countless lives, countless hopes. Lieutenant Aaron broke the silence, his voice trembling. "Captain, they're slowing down. Entire fleets. They're actually slowing their approach." Mara nodded quietly. "Yes, Aaron. They're beginning to realize that we are not just another threat. We are a species that stands for something more. something they cannot ignore. Outside, alien commanders tried to rally their crews, but hesitation spread like wildfire. Commander Zarn's tentacles clenched around his console, frustration and fear warring in his mind. We must not fight a single ship. This is madness. Yet the Zalarian ships remained motionless. Their weapons would not fire. Systems glitched as if resisting their pilots' commands. Even the Karathi, renowned for their discipline and aggression, found their fleets faltering. Commander Rith's voice trembled as he issued orders that were ignored by both machines and minds. Why won't they obey? How is this happening? Mara's voice came across the void once more, firm but calm, echoing into every ship, every mind, every corner of the war zone. Enough blood has been spilled. Stop this, lay down your weapons. Choose life over destruction. Choose hope over hatred. There is a way forward. One that does not cost more lives, one that does not destroy more worlds. The words were simple, but the meaning was profound. They cut through centuries of war, through generations of anger and fear, and into the hearts of beings who had never imagined such courage. A single human voice had reached across impossible distances, and with it a message of clarity, of reason, and of unshakable determination. In the Zalarian fleet, a small squadron rotated its weapons offline, the pilot's eyes wide with disbelief. We cannot fight," one whispered. Not after hearing that voice, not after seeing them face us without fear. Across the Karathi ships, a similar scene unfolded. Pilots lowered their shields, engines slowed, and communication channels opened hesitantly. Maybe we've been wrong," Rith admitted quietly. "Maybe this war has gone too far." Mara's gaze swept over her crew, a quiet pride filling her chest. "This is it," she said softly. "The turning point. They're starting to see what we fight for. They're starting to understand that courage is stronger than fear and hope is stronger than hate." Lieutenant Aaron swallowed hard. "Captain, entire squadrons are powering down. All of them. Weapons offline." "Good," Mara replied. "Let them feel it. Let them understand the human way. Not through force, but through resilience, through honesty, through the refusal to surrender to despair." Outside the Aegis, the war zone was transforming. Ships that had fired thousands of blasts in endless battles now drifted like silent ghosts. Alien commanders stared at each other, their minds racing, hearts trembling. They had never imagined a species capable of this, capable of stopping entire fleets without a single shot fired. Then, slowly, a broadcast came from Commander Zarn. His voice, once filled with rage and certainty, was now quiet, almost broken. "All units. Cease fire. Weapons offline. Engines idle. We surrender." Simultaneously, Rith spoke across the Karathi fleet, his tone heavy with disbelief and awe. We yield. Lay down arms. We accept your terms. We surrender." A ripple of shock passed through the Aegis. The crew stared at the screens, barely believing what they saw. Entire fleets, hundreds of ships from two of the galaxy's greatest powers, had surrendered to a single human vessel. Not because of destruction, not because of weapons, but because of courage, hope, and the undeniable presence of humanity itself. Mara closed her eyes for a moment, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and sorrow for the lives lost before this moment. "We did not fight with weapons," she whispered. "We fought with what makes us human." We reminded them that hope can never be destroyed if someone refuses to let it die. Aaron's voice trembled. "Captain, they're coming toward us unarmed. Communication channels open. They want to talk." Mara's lips curved into a quiet, confident smile. "Then we listen, and we show them the way forward. The human way." And in that moment, the war zone, once a theater of endless death, began to change. A new era was dawning, not through fire or conquest, but through the courage of one human ship, carrying hope into the heart of the galaxy. The war zone, once alive with destruction and death, now held an unusual calm. Hundreds of alien ships floated silently, their weapons powered down, their engines steady but idle. The fleets of Zilarians and Karathi no longer moved like armies ready for battle. They moved like beings unsure of what came next, their minds shaken by something they had never seen before, the courage of a single human ship. The USS Aegis drifted among them, shining silver in the void, its hull unscathed, its crew tense but resolute. Captain Mara Hayes stood at the bridge, her eyes scanning the fleets. This was more than a victory, it was a beginning. The aliens had surrendered, not because they had been defeated by force, but because they had been faced with something beyond their understanding: humanity itself. Lieutenant Aaron leaned over the console, voice barely above a whisper. "Captain, they're opening communication channels. Every single ship, they want to speak." Mara nodded, a soft smile spreading across her face. "Good. We'll meet them halfway. This is the moment we show them who we are, not as enemies, but as humans." The first contact came from the Zilarian flagship. Commander Zarn's image appeared on the screen, tentacles curling nervously. "Captain Hayes, I do not understand how did a single ship, one small human ship, cause my entire fleet to surrender? We expected fear, we expected battle. Instead, we felt something else." Mara's voice was calm and steady, carrying warmth that transcended language and species. "Commander Zarn, you did not surrender to fear. You surrendered to reason, to hope, to the realization that endless fighting destroys everything. That is what humans do. We fight, yes, but not for destruction. We fight for survival, for compassion, for a future worth living." Zarn's tentacles twitched, a mixture of awe and confusion showing in his expression. We have never encountered such courage, such calm. In the face of destruction, it is terrifying and beautiful. Simultaneously, the Karathi commander Rith joined the communication. His armored form loomed on the screen, eyes wide with disbelief. "Captain, you speak truth that we never thought to hear. For centuries we fought without pause. But now we understand. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps there is another way." Mara nodded gently. "Yes, Commander Rith, there is always another way. War is not inevitable. Destruction is not the only path. Today you chose life. You chose hope. And that choice can save millions of lives." Across the fleets, conversations began to ripple. Ships rotated toward each other, alien crews cautiously communicating for the first time in decades. Apologies were exchanged. Stories of loss, of grief, of fear and anger were shared through fragile transmissions. Slowly, understanding began to bloom. The Warzone, once a theater of endless conflict, was becoming a place of dialogue, of empathy, of possibility. Inside the Aegis, the crew watched silently. Their hands remained on consoles, ready for anything. But they no longer feared attack. They had witnessed something extraordinary. The power of human presence, human courage, human hope. Mara moved among them, her voice quiet but full of pride. "You've done more than survive," she said softly. "You've reminded the galaxy why humans are never to be underestimated. We can inspire even without a weapon." Lieutenant Aaron swallowed hard. "Captain, it's incredible. They're actually listening. They're learning from us." Mara's eyes softened. "Yes, Aaron. They are learning that strength is not only measured in firepower. Strength is measured in heart, in courage, in the willingness to stand for something greater than oneself." Small shuttles began to leave the human ship, moving cautiously toward alien vessels. Humans and aliens met in the void, exchanging gestures, words, and symbols of peace. Mara watched as the first steps of understanding were taken, knowing that this fragile trust could grow into something lasting. For the first time in centuries, the Warzone was not a place of fear. It was a place of potential. Every alien commander, every pilot, every crew member who had once sought only to destroy now faced a new reality. Humanity had shown them a different path. A path where courage, hope, and compassion could win over violence and hatred. Mara took a deep breath and looked out at the void. "This is why we fight," she whispered. Not to conquer, not to dominate, but to remind the universe that all life is precious, and that even in the darkest hour hope can shine through. The USS Aegis floated among the surrendered fleets, a silver beacon of calm and resilience. The galaxy had changed in those moments, not because of force but because of humanity itself. And in the hearts of every being who had faced her crew, a spark had been lit. A spark of understanding, of hope, and of the possibility of peace. Mara turned to her crew, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "We've done it," she said softly. "We didn't fire a single shot. We didn't destroy a single ship. But we've saved countless lives. And maybe we've saved the future." And somewhere across the void, in every alien mind and heart, a new truth began to take root. Humans were not just fighters. Humans were a force of courage and hope, a force that could not be measured by weapons alone, a force that could change the galaxy, with nothing more than their hearts. The Warzone, once a place of endless chaos, had become a sea of stillness. Ships from both the Zalarian and Karathi fleets drifted quietly, their weapons silent, engines idling. The endless cycle of violence had stopped, and in its place was a fragile, shimmering calm. The USS Aegis floated among them, a lone silver symbol of courage and hope, carrying the crew that had changed the course of history. Captain Mara Hayes stood on the bridge, her gaze sweeping over the surrendered fleets. The enormity of what had happened settled over her like a heavy, quiet wave. One human ship, one crew, and yet the galaxy had stopped. Entire civilizations had laid down their weapons, not out of fear, but out of respect for a species that had shown them something they had never known. Courage without violence, hope without compromise, strength without destruction. Lieutenant Aaron approached her, eyes wide with awe. "Captain, it's unbelievable. Hundreds of ships, 2 fleets, surrendered to one human vessel. How did we do this?" Mara smiled softly, her voice calm but full of quiet pride. "We didn't do it with weapons, Aaron. We did it with what makes us human. With courage, with heart, with hope. They saw that we don't fight for power or greed, but for life. And that is stronger than anything they've ever faced." Outside, alien leaders cautiously moved closer. Commander Zarn of the Zalarians rotated his massive vessel, coming into formation beside the Aegis. His tentacles twitched nervously as he addressed Mara directly. "Captain Hayes, you have shown us a path we never imagined. One small human ship, and yet you have stopped a war that has raged for centuries. How is this possible?" Mara's voice was gentle, almost tender. "Because we believe that life is worth saving no matter the cost. We believe that hope matters more than fear. We believe that even the smallest act of courage can change the universe, and sometimes that is enough to make others see the truth." Commander Reith of the Karathi appeared alongside Zarn, his armor gleaming under the starlight. We have never understood humans before," he admitted quietly. "But now we see. You fight differently. You inspire differently. And it is powerful," Mara nodded. "It is not power in the way you think. It is simply refusing to give in to despair. It is refusing to surrender to hatred. It is believing that even in the darkest moments a single choice can save lives." Across the war zone, alien crews hesitated no longer. They opened communication channels offering apologies, sharing grief for the lives lost and promising to reconsider the endless cycle of war. Mara watched as beings who had once hunted each other like predators now began to connect, speak, and understand. For the first time in centuries, dialogue replaced destruction. The war zone, once a graveyard of planets and hopes, was becoming a place of possibility. Lieutenant Aaron's voice broke through the quiet, filled with emotion. "Captain, they're asking to visit our ship. They want to learn from us." Mara's eyes shone with pride and compassion. "Then we show them, Aaron. We teach them what it means to be human, not just with words, but with actions, with honesty, with heart." She turned to the bridge crew. "We have changed the galaxy today. Not by conquering, not by destroying, but by standing firm in what we believe. Remember this moment. Remember that even one human ship, one crew, one heart, can make the impossible possible. Slowly, the first shuttles left the Aegis, carrying humans toward alien ships. Bridges filled with tentative faces, alien and human alike, all learning, all sharing, all beginning to understand that war was not the only path. Mara watched each meeting carefully, feeling the weight of history in every gesture, every nod, every shared word. Finally, she looked out at the stars. They stretched endlessly before her, silent witnesses to the change that had just begun. The universe had seen the courage of humans, and it had paused to listen. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "We are not perfect. We are not invincible, but we are brave. And sometimes, that is enough." The USS Aegis floated in the void, silver and steadfast. Across countless light years, stories would spread of this day, of one human ship entering a war zone alone, and of how courage and hope could stop an entire galaxy. In every heart that had witnessed it, a new truth took root. Humanity was not just a species to fear or to fight. Humanity was a force capable of inspiring change, of sparking hope, of reminding the universe that life and courage were worth more than any weapon. Mara turned to her crew, her eyes full of warmth and quiet triumph. "We have done something remarkable," she said. "We didn't just survive. We reminded the universe that humanity stands even when everything else falls, and that, my friends, is a legacy worth leaving." And in the silence of space, as stars shimmered across the void, a new era began, one not of war but of possibility, one where courage, hope, and heart mattered more than weapons or fear, one where a single human ship had entered a war zone, and in doing so had changed the fate of the galaxy forever.